So imagine there's two guys, Mark and John, and both of them are quite young. They're in their 20s, and they're about to go out into life. Now Mark has decided, you know what, I'm not going to get rejected, because he's seen all of the things online about how being rejected is the worst thing. This is how you avoid any sort of rejection. He's seen the videos of guys getting called like creeps and weirdos for being bold enough to go and speak to a woman or something like that. And he's like, no, I don't want any part of that. So he decides, from now on, I will never, ever be put in a place where I could be rejected. So he lives his life. He goes about it. He doesn't ask or talk to anybody who doesn't talk to him first. He wouldn't dare ask for a girl's number, go out on a date with her. He doesn't apply to jobs that he doesn't think he would absolutely be guaranteed a position in. And overall, he basically puts a shell around himself that other people need to break, that he would never dare touch. And then you have John. Now, John decides to do the exact opposite, just to spite his brother. He decides to be put in every single position that could allow him to be rejected. He's constantly talking to new people, even adding himself to groups of people that were chatting. He asks girls out all the time, asks for their number. He's always applying to jobs, trying to network, meet new people every single day. And he gets rejected like hell. Constant rejections. He does have one thing though. He gets accepted more. And overall, now they're both old men. They are in their late 80s, on their deathbeds. Between the two of them, who do you think will have more people at their side on their deathbed? Because I can tell you for sure, it won't be the guy that didn't want to get rejected. It won't be the guy that decided that it's not worth it to put yourself out there. But look, I understand why we fear rejection. It's pretty normal. It's a human part of us. Like, our ancestors lived in groups, in tribes. And if you were rejected in any way, then that was essentially a death sentence. You get kicked out and mauled by a saber-toothed tiger or something. Like a giant eagle would come and swoop you up. So, of course, no one wants to be rejected. It's not something anybody likes to happen. But rejection is really a beautiful thing. And we should be grateful that it exists. Because it's like a door. You need to open the door. And it may be locked, but you open it. And it can lead you to some of the most amazing friendships, relationships, and opportunities that you will experience. I remember that there was this girl I was talking to, and I asked her at one point, like, hey, after school you want to go hang out? And she was being nice beforehand. I probably should have known she wasn't interested, but when I asked that question, absolutely ghosted. Did not hear back from her whatsoever. And thankfully I didn't do the the silly thing of trying to double text and triple text and try to repeat message her. I got the message, but it hurt, like any sort of rejection does. But the thing is that I'm not really that upset about it, because the thing is, I've noticed, rejection usually, it hurts for a minute, 10 minutes, an hour, and then it just doesn't really matter that much. You just go through your day after it's done. But the pain of missing an opportunity, like, if she did like me, and we did end up going out on that date, and I didn't do that because I was scared she would reject me, that would still be replaying in my mind to this day, probably 5 years from now. Because rejection is nothing worse than the pain of regret. You know, there's this chapter in The Way of the Superior Man that talks about live just beyond your edge. Now, obviously, that means that if you want to grow, you need to be pushing yourself every single day. But the thing is that pushing yourself looks different for every person. For example, I enjoy running sometimes. Me going for a 3-kilometer run, for some people, that would be absolutely pushing themselves to their max. For me, that would be like a fun day out, you know? Same with us as introverts. We push ourselves by speaking to other people, whereas an extrovert would be like, you need to use your mental bandwidth to do that. Can't you just go and speak to people? But they just don't understand that us introverts, we value real connection over like some shallow ones. So trying to speak to people that we don't really vibe with just feels exhausting to us. So when I'm telling you that we need to live just beyond our edge, I mean that you need to put yourself in positions to be rejected. Of course, there is a smarter way to speak to people. You don't have to do it aimlessly. And in my full introvert guide, I've actually covered it, but I don't want to make this some sort of selling thing, so just check it out if you want to. I think it'll be well worth your time. I know it sounds scary, it sounds terrifying, right? Rejection. But remember, who do you want to have? No, who do you want to be? John or Mark? Because one of them is going to have a lot of people that love them and care about them on their deathbed, and one of them will not. So the question about who do you want to be is quite simply dictated by how many connections have you made. And unsurprisingly, like the very basic answer, the more people you speak to and chat to, it's just natural, like the law of, okay, I'm not going to sound scientific here, but just the law of science or math, that if you're talking to more people, it's more likely you're going to make more friends, more connections, and thus you will have more people when it's over, when your life is at its end, rather than speaking to way less people who only speak to you first. Then the chances of you making great big connections is smaller. So really think of rejection like you're going to the gym, right? Like you're doing a bicep curl, you know, a very standard gym exercise. Every rep you do, every no that you get from the job, from the friend group, from the woman, every no is like an extra curl, and it's overall building up your bicep. Yeah, and every no you get builds up your bicep, and that's like your, I guess, social maturity. And the guy that decides to never get rejected, he never puts himself in a position where he could face a no. He has metaphorically tiny arms. Like you could wrap your entire palm around his bicep. That's how small they are. Whereas you, the person who goes out there confidently, he goes and asks the questions. He goes and asks for like a 10% discount at the Starbucks. He goes up to that group of people and starts chatting up with them. He goes up to that woman. He does everything that could be a rejection for him. He has huge metaphorical biceps, like the kind that you could get strangled by. And you can have that just as easily. It just takes a little bit of courage and a don't really give a fuck attitude, you know, which you can have, and hopefully I can make some videos in the future talking about how to have that even more. So stay tuned for that. In fact, maybe you should subscribe so that you're aware of it when it happens. Anyway, remember, take action, learn from failure. See ya.